Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Freestead with today's Daily Hope. We're up to Philippians in chapter 2. We're at verse 8. Before I read this, I wonder if you had an older sibling who you had trouble keeping pace with, and what that felt like to have someone out in front of you who just seemed to be achieving all these things that you could or would never achieve. Now listen to verse 8. Jesus, being found in appearance as a man, humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. So this whole passage is the progression of Jesus. Back in verse 6, it says he's in very nature God, but he didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped. Instead, he lowered himself or humbled himself. So the progression for him goes like this: from heavenly to humbled to ultimately humiliated by his death on the cross. That is so opposite of the human striving, because we are all born humble, and we know that we're humble because we're children in a world run by adults. So we try to exalt ourselves, avoiding humiliation at all costs and really making ourselves godlike. That's the heavenly part of the progression that we want to have, from humble, avoiding humiliation, and now I've made it. I have made it for myself. But verse 8 says Jesus went the opposite direction, being found in appearance as a man. And by the way, that doesn't mean that he only appeared to be a man. That's an old Gnostic heresy in the Christian church, that things that were physical were actually evil. So therefore, Jesus didn't really have a body. He was just appearing to be human. But that's not what this means. This means he was found in appearance. So he took the form of a man, and he realized his own limitations. Jesus, yes, had to sleep. Jesus, yes, had to eat. Jesus wore out. His body actually died. And so imagine that Jesus was in heaven at one time, and he was complete and he was perfect, and he never had any human limitations. And so to become incarnate, to take on flesh, was a price that he paid in humbling himself. And then he becomes obedient to death, even death on a cross. So how does verse 8 give us hope? Well, to go back to the question that I asked, if you ever had an older sibling who was just like setting a standard for you that you could never possibly achieve, but Jesus does not call us to do the impossible. He doesn't call us to make ourselves heavenly, as if Jesus was just like this example of a superhuman whose path we could follow and emulate exactly. No, it's just the opposite. Jesus does for us what we can't do for ourselves. Number one, stepping out of heaven and taking on flesh. Number two, living his life in such a way that although he was God, he's actually willing to accept humiliation and death. And finally, that we are not heavenly from the moment that we're born. We're not. So how could we possibly follow in his footsteps? So Jesus is in appearance human. In his form, he is human. But that doesn't mean that we can be just like Jesus, because what a burden that would be on us. That would be like having the perfect older brother or perfect older sister, where the parents are saying, well, they got straight A's. How come you can't get straight A's? They got a college scholarship. How come you can't get a scholarship? And Jesus does not expect that of us. He's a savior who took on human form, but he started as so much more. And he calls us up to where he is, not by effort, not by striving, but by saving us. He is the life saver. And look at the life that he lived. And thank him for being a savior. That's today's Daily Hope.